I feel like the cancer part made a very strong impact on my life because like now, whenever I face problems, whenever I go through a hard situation, I think to myself like if I could go through cancer at 10 years old, I can do anything.
This is nothing.
So yeah.
Our parents are so used to don't ask. Just leave it as it is, because the moment you ask, like 7 generations are going to be cursed, right? That's what they always say.
Death has fill in the blanks.
Are you sure this is not a gloomy scene?
We'll get to the fun part later.
Okay.
Like when you
a
go
lot,
shopping.
right? I think a lot of us there's so much to this, but death is, right? Because like what you say, it's not just the gloomy parts, because I have suffered from the pain of death, and I've also enjoyed the gifts of the grief that came along, right?
On today's episode of The Usual Place, we're talking about the one thing in life that we cannot avoid, and that is death. Now, this isn't going to be a gloomy episode, I hope, fingers crossed. In fact, I have 3 people on the couch with me who are cool. We're talking about death in a which casket would suit my vibe kind of way. Now, welcome to the show, Alif, Kethlyn, and Hui Sze. All 3 of you appear on Let's Talk About Death. So this is a 5-episode docuseries by the Straits Times, and it follows several millennials and their loved ones as they navigate end-of-life planning, and we all open up about honest conversations about death and dying well. So thank you very much for coming on the show. So I have to ask, what is that point where you change your perspective of death or made you think differently about death? Maybe, because you're nearest to me, you can kick us off.
Sure. I think something that I've been thinking about recently is more of, doesn't mean we are young, means we are immune to death, right? Like death has no timing per se, it can happen anytime. So it is actually quite foolish for us to not think about it, right? And the docuseries kind of made us say something like, let's get our death in order, correct?
Yeah.
And actually I think it makes a lot of sense because we think about life in a way of like, let's begin with the end in mind. And if we want to get our life in order, I think getting your death in order brings about a lot of clarity.
I think a lot of young people be like, I'm still trying to like adult and get my life in order. And then you guys are like next level thinking about death, right? Yeah, but what do you think, Kethlyn?
I think I was like the weird kid. I think I was always thinking about death like since I was a very small kid.
Really?
Yeah, like at the age of 16, I actually planned, on my birthday itself, I actually planned my funeral. Yeah, I wrote it down on a piece of paper and I said, when I die, this is what I want it to be. And the one thing that I remember from when I was 16 was I wanted to host my own funeral. And I kept on to that. I know usually for funerals, you invite people to give eulogies and stuff. But at that point, I think when I was 16, I wanted to take charge. And probably because when I was younger, the older generation, like my mom's side of the family especially, a lot of people were passing away. And as a young kid, when you see all of this and we were involved in the process of things, getting to see, the casket, getting to see the loved one in the casket itself, and then after that, burning joss papers. I always ask, like, what happens during that whole thing, like things that we don't get to see, and what happens after that. And most of the time when you ask your family members, right, they'll say, very pantang, don't ask, don't talk about it, unless you're inviting death.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is what I was going to say. Like, maybe some people like watching this episode might be thinking exactly that, right?
Yeah. So where do you find the answers? I mean, you can obviously Google it, but Google will always scare you with saying that you have cancer, you're going to be dying soon. They don't really give you the answers that you're looking for. So the best thing was to actually go through the entire process yourself and get the answers as well. Yeah.
Well, Alif, you have a very, would you say it was a difficult experience, or how would you characterize your experience, and then how does
where do I begin? I'm, for all I know, I can say when I was 16, I was just not as mature as you because I was just out there having fun, just like a typical young boy would have. Yeah. So anyway, my side of the story, it's slightly different because I was closer to death than anyone else. Because when I was 10 years old, I had cancer. So it was a major cancer, rhabdomyosarcoma. So there's a medical term that confuses everyone, right? Yeah,
I think you're the only one who can pronounce it.
Yes, correct.
Besides the couch. When I saw it, I was like, what's this?
So I mean, for me, when I was 10 years old, I don't really know what death was. Like when I was diagnosed and I went through treatment, my mom was there, and I was always like looking at her. Why is she crying? Like, I have no idea why she's crying because I'm a kid. And then like now that I am old enough and I start to look back, then it starts to hit me in the spot, thinking that it's actually not too young to plan for anything.
That's a lot to go through.
It is.
Did you at that point think about death? Because you were 10. What was that like for you?
Honestly, at the start, it didn't really feel like death was very scary because I was like, just 1 week ago, I was having fun in the school field, and then the next week, I'm in bed and I'm bald, I have wires all over me because I went through chemotherapy. So at that point, it didn't really hit me, but I was wondering, why am I feeling all this pain? Because chemotherapy sucks, man. It was like feel really, really hot inside you. But I think it started to hit me when I start to see all the other patients, because it's a children's ward. So I have, like, over time, I meet friends, and afterwards I start to see them not coming anymore. So I start to ask them, like, where is she? Where is he? So then they actually, like, they passed on. So that's when I realized, wow, this is actually quite serious. Yeah.
So how would you say you, at your age now, how do you each view death? Like, Hui Sze, what's your experience with, what's your perspective on what death is actually?
Death is...
Fill in the blanks.
Are you sure this is not a gloomy session?
We'll get to the fun part later.
Okay.
Like,
There's
when you
a
go
lot,
shopping.
right? I think a lot of us would. There's so much to this, but death is, right? Because, like what you say, it's not just the gloomy parts, because I have suffered from the pain of death, and I've also enjoyed the gifts of the grief that came along, right? So it's very hard to put it.
Gifts in grief? That's an interesting thing to say.
I think today, right before I came to this space, when I was just taking the bus and the train here, I just had a moment to myself, and I said thank you to my dad and my grandma for their losses and their death, because through their death, I have learned a lot, reflected a lot, confronted a lot about my own life, and that also allowed me to kind of eventually make my way into this space to meet all of you, right? As painful as that event, those deaths were, they gifted me something. They arrested me to live in the present a lot more. And I cannot be more grateful for that, because if not for that, I don't think I am living life as intentionally as I can be lah. So I don't know if it answered the question, like, what does death mean to me? It still scares me. Like, I am still afraid of death. I think a lot of things I do in my daily life is going against death, like trying to be healthy and spending time with people I love. It scares me, but what about death that scares me also spurs me. So it's a mixed feeling that I have, mixed bag of emotions I have towards death. Yeah.
Do you guys agree? Maybe Kethlyn?
I think to me, death is part and parcel of life. And it's inevitable, right? It's going to happen anyways. And if you peg so much fear to it, you are going to be overthinking constantly. You're going to be so scared of everything. And then you're going to go down to the point of saying, oh, I have so many regrets. I wish I did this. I wish I did that. And most of the time when I chat with people who have like illnesses or they have experienced near-death experiences, there's always like a wake-up call where they say, oh, after going through this, I now realize I've not done enough with my life. And I feel that we don't need to experience that in order to value life and the people in it a lot more. I think, so what happened after the docuseries was, I was even more curious about that.
I feel like you're an outlier here. It's like, let me Google about it.
Yeah, so I went to sign up with the Life Celebrant, and I said, I want to know more about death. Can I go through the process? Can I learn what do you do behind the scenes?
Wait, what is the Life Celebrant?
So the Life Celebrant is actually a funeral parlor. It is run by Eng Jolie May. So basically, the Life Celebrant is very unique because they do all forms of funeral processes, all religions. But the one that I was the most interested in was in showers of love. And what they do is they actually use love languages to actually kind of cater to the person that passed on. So they actually have a kind of like a pedestal that is erected and the person is laid there. And we go through the process of actually showering the body, speaking to the person, taking care of the person, giving the person a spa treatment, and we get family members to do it as well. So I was an angel. We called the staff members angel. So I was one of the angels, and we were there that when we guided the family members through it. And that was where I realized more and more that a lot of family members, especially Asian values, right, very paiseh to say, I'm sorry, or thank you, I love you. And it's only when the person passes on, then they say, oh, now I want to say. But then even then also, I don't want to say in front of people. Yeah.
Okay.
But then we realized, we always remind them, now is the last chance because the person's going to get cremated. And if you don't say it now, you're never going to be able to say it, right? And I think these are just reminders for us as well. Like, hey, you still need to treat the person with dignity, even after the person has passed on. And I think it helps a lot of us who, grew up in traditional family settings as well, where it's very pantang to touch a deceased person. Or some, I think, because my mom is Chinese and she said, oh, sometimes, when you have a funeral procession, right, you cannot walk across because it's bad luck. Yeah, or you cannot wear certain colors and all that. And I think the younger generation, especially now, we put a question mark and say why.
Yeah.
What happens if we do?
Like we're questioning more.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it's also good for us because we want that information and we want to have that knowledge to understand why things are the way they are. Whereas, our parents are so used to don't ask. Just leave it as it is, because the moment you ask, like 7 generations are going to be cursed, right? That's what they always say. Yeah. So I think it's all in all, long story short, death to me is part and parcel of life. It is better to prepare for it so that you don't run helter-skelter the moment it hits you, especially your family members. They're going to panic. There's going to be a lot. I always say the most amount of conflict that can happen is when someone dies.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of decisions to be made that we don't actually realize.
And it's under a very short amount of time as well. So when you are stressed, it's like when we're taking exams, right? And there will always be people who say, my opinion matters more. So then what do you do? And I think for me and my mom especially, it was very interesting to see that because she comes from a very traditional family as well. And it's also a matriarchal family. So then what happens when in some funeral processions where the male figure has to do it? Yeah. Or like if your children and your descendants have to do it. And my mom said, no, I don't want any of this. Yeah. So what's going to happen? We don't know.
That's interesting perspective. Alif, you went through an illness at a very young age. I'm not sure if did you grasp the concept of death at that time? And did it change? Like now you're like 18 years later, almost 2 decades, right? Is it 20 years on?
Yeah.
Did anything change for you in that like space?
Wow. Okay, let me just put myself back there. Okay, so I think for myself, I would say that there was 1.5 years of treatment, so it was constant vomiting, constant dizziness, pain inside that sometimes I don't know how to put it in words, but like afterwards, I started being a bit grateful to life. Like I start to, after I'm fully treated, I'm recovered, and then I go back to school. Okay, the sucky thing is that when I was in school, I got bullied for just a bit. Then I became
This was
bully.
during the illness or like in general?
This was after the illness because when I was actually primary 4, so I was taken out because I had to go for treatment. It was 8 or 9 cycles of chemotherapy and 9 surgeries.
Wow.
Yeah, my major surgery lasted 8 hours long.
Wow.
Yeah.
9 surgeries.
Yeah, so coming back to school as a primary 4 kid, right? And then imagine yourself, in primary school you have to sit down in the assembly hall. So I was like, okay, the assembly hall is here, the stage is here, and I'm right here. So everyone is not wearing a cap, but I am wearing a cap. Why? Because I'm bald. So I remember this teacher, she said in the mic, the kid over there with the hat, please remove your hat.
That's awful.
And boom. Yeah, so all eyes were on me and I was bald. So I felt like,
Oh no.
like the most depressed person on life in the world. Yeah. So, afterwards, it took a while before, I believe like the teachers told around the kids that, treat this guy better. I don't know what happens behind closed doors, right? Yeah. So, I started being friends with everyone again. And slowly I blended in to the community, I would say, with as my hair grew. And I started just being a bit happier, with like happy-go-lucky kind of person, and start to appreciate life more. And I guess it made a strong impact leading to where I am right now. Like I try, sometimes even when I'm sad, I try to like put a facade that, oh, I'm happy, let's just live life as it is, you know?
Because you're remembering that episode.
Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yes,
Okay. It's okay to be sad.
yes, it's okay.
I feel I should caveat that. But okay, so it gave you a different perspective on from a child experiencing this to an adult.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, in the docu-series, you guys actually talk about very different things. So Hui Sze and Kethlyn, you guys actually like go look at stuff. Yeah, like caskets and then like processes of being buried. And then Alif, you and your wife, Liana, right?
Yeah.
You actually, which is kind of an interesting conversation, you guys actually look at preserving your digital footprint, I want to say,
Yes.
right? Or like, so if one of you passes on and then what happens to your digital passwords and stuff like that, right? So this happens in the docu-series. But I want, and you guys generally seem all right with the whole process about talking about it. And I want to ask, was there anything hard about discussing it? Like, did you think about your own mortality while talking about it? Or what was hard for you, if anything at all? Yeah.
I think for me, it was whether it will be scarring for my mom, because my dad passed away 7 years ago. And it was a very difficult thing because he was her first love, and, you know, they were sweethearts and all that. So to lose someone, they were together for 32 years, and all of a sudden she's alone. Right? So I don't know whether talking about death and revisiting certain parts would be scary for her. But Bede Anna, if you see the docu-series, right, she
looks
was
very
having
happy
more
on it.
fun
Oh, okay, okay.
than me.
Yeah. She was really shopping for a casket. And
She
I
was.
like,
She
okay.
was. It seemed as though she was really shopping for a new bed. And she was like, going around and like peeping into the caskets and stuff. So it was really nice and comforting to see that she was all right with it. But after the docu-series, I actually asked her and I said, hey, but what if the roles were switched? What if I was the one that passed away before you? And I think that was a difficult topic for her. Having to bury the husband is very different from burying your own child. Yeah. So that was when she started getting a bit more emotional and like, why are you talking about this now?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, why did you bring it up? It's like getting her all emotional.
No, I
but
think
why did you bring it up?
Why did I bring it up was because me and my brothers, we are, I don't know, maybe we have made the decision to not have kids in the future. So both
All of
brothers,
you?
all three
Okay.
of us.
Okay.
So there will not be, if let's say we are the last people standing, there's going to be no one else to do it. And that was a very big question mark that I had. Like, what's going to happen to me if I'm the last person in my family or amongst my group of friends, right? And, you know, if let's say my mom is in the pink of health and she happens to be the last person out of all of us, will she be able to stomach all of these process? Because in my docu-series, we had to go through like the paperwork, the LPA, the HOTA, and so on. And during the filming itself, she just said, oh, if I see all these paperwork, right, I will just close my laptop. I cannot do it. Yeah.
She's like, someone else
Just
do
check.
with it.
Exactly. Right? So then I told her, I said, will you be able to make all this decision? One is the emotional stability, but the other thing is there are so many processes in place. And for someone who is already grieving, you might not be in the right state of mind to make all that decision on your own, right? So I asked her like, just elbow and say, how ah? Then she say, no lah, it's okay, don't talk about it. It will not happen. That's what she said. But I think on the realer side of things, we have seen the younger generation, some of them, you know, heart attacks while exercising, while traveling. It does happen. It's inevitable as well. And I think we need to have that conversation as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Hui Sze, was anything hard for you?
For me, the second part of the docuseries, I was invited to kind of share with people, like if I were to pass. So basically I had to confront my own mortality, right? And I thought I was going to be very comfortable with it because I've been talking about it a lot, which was great. But basically it's, let's say if I were to die now, what do I want to tell people to do with my things, my stuff? Literally what's going to happen to things in my room, right? I think like you, I think I had a lot of thoughts about if I were to tell my mom this, would she be able to stomach it? But I think all the more it was important for me to be very clear, like this is what's important to me. You can keep it, you can lose it. The value of why certain things are important to me is a lot more important than the thing is to me, right? Something that I mentioned, I think in a part of the series was that if I were to pass and a lot of my friends are still alive, please come and use my room. Please come and spend time with my mom, because a lot of my friends do know my mother, and just do that for me, right? Like there's this space, use it. I think I choose to believe it's a responsible thing for me to do. Like what you say, when someone passes on, the responsible thing to do is to kind of, how can I take care of people who are alive when I'm gone? And I think that is my way of taking care of you, because that's exactly what my dad did before he died. We actually went to close his bank accounts together. We sold the car. I remember.
He did this with you?
Yes, we all did it together. So the painful and difficult but also blessed thing about cancer is there was a prognosis for us to work with. So in the 1.5 years, we were intentional about buying his final resting place, talking about funeral arrangements. He didn't need to write a will because we managed to settle all his assets, which was helpful for us. And I remember there was once, this was COVID time, I was working in the room, and then I came out. I remember the night before I said, Daddy, like, can you work towards calling the banks or whatnot, and we want to start closing your accounts? And he said, with a bit of hesitation, I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then the next day I came out, I saw him on the phone, right? And on the phone, he was just, like when you call a certain bank, you're just put on the music, right? Like, thank you for calling and your patience. And he was on that for so long, right? And then finally he picked up the phone and he was explaining to them why he needed to close his account. It was
what did he tell them?
He said, like, I have cancer and I'm going to die soon. And
he was just straight up.
He was straight up. Yeah. And I think
that was traumatized the staff.
Like, I'm not sure on the phone.
What?
Yeah.
Can you repeat that, sir? Yes.
Yeah, and I think that was something, I don't know, was it a card or something that we cancelled online through the phone, and then we did one at the bank as well. I think the bank staff was a bit shocked, but with that, then they don't ask you any more questions, right? Because if you intend to close the account, they want you to open more. Yeah. So I think they were about to but then you can consider this, if this is not, then they were just like, okay.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. And I think in that moment, it was painful. We were asking what is difficult, right? That was painful to witness. But also, I feel very blessed and honored to witness it, because I think that's my father's way of loving me, my mom and my sister, and knowing that he has put everything in place so that when he's gone, he doesn't need to worry that we are fussing about this admin, because you're so right. After he passed, our brain just had no space for anything. But luckily, everything was settled, right? There will still be trailing admin. You will still have mails that come through and just like, what is this? But at least the big things were settled. So yeah, it's great that we have planned. It was painful to plan through it, but after that, it really gave us a lot of lightness lah. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Alif, was there anything difficult for you to talk on the show?
I would say the difficult part would be because during the docuseries of my episode itself, there are like a few segments. And one of the last few segments was creating my own wheel through AI, artificial intelligence, right? So it's interesting because now everyone's using ChatGPT, etc. for even Instagram captions, right?
Yes.
So when I actually, it's slightly different because as a Muslim, you have to write a totally different will compared to a conventional will, right? So when we searched up, okay, ChatGPT, hi, can you draft me a template of a Muslim will? So ChatGPT actually did that. It's quite impressive. And then I copy pasted it, and I had to replace, for example, my name is, so I have to insert my name into the blank. And while reading through it and actually inserting my names and my details, it felt like really real, because I've never done this before. I've never seen a will before. And what struck me the most was when I saw how my body was going to be treated. So let's say, for example, I give permission to this person to handle my body and wash my body. So
this is in the will?
It is in the will, the template.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I read that, I was doing it alone in my room. Liana was beside, but I think I was just having my own moment in the zone. So when I read that, right, and it felt like I couldn't continue doing it up, even though I know it's just for, like, it's not really the actual will, but to put myself in that position at a young age, it feels I don't know, no words
You were
can
like
describe that.
confronting
Yeah.
yourself, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
What
It's like
happens?
what you said when you were the angel and you were washing
Yeah.
someone. So
And we do a lot of, I think the Muslim families also do a very similar process. And I think it's quite difficult. It's really, really very difficult, especially when the person is a loved one. Like for me as an angel, when it's someone else, it's easier for me because you don't have that emotional
correct.
barrier tied to it. But it must be quite difficult. I mean, because in a will, it's putting everything in stone, right? It's making that final decision.
It's like your last love letter.
last love letter.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Is there anything that's still like you're not ready to confront yet, you think?
Not that I know of at this point, but even as I have dived into this topic a lot, I personally have not done my own LPA.
Okay. Are you avoiding it?
I think I am basically that person that I talk about, that I think that I'm young and I'm immune to death. And I don't think there's anything wrong per se, but I am constantly reminded year after year in my New Year resolution is do it. Right? I think
This
right
is
now,
your New Year resolution to
Yeah.
do your LPL. Okay, I'm gonna do an episode about
Before
resolutions
it's
and
not
put
free
that.
anymore, right?
yeah, because firstly it's not free anymore, and while I have the mental capacity to do it, I don't need a
yes,
doctor
yes.
or someone to certify it. When
Yeah.
it's easy, I should do it, and I advocate for it. I made my dad do it. I made my mom do it. Then I feel like I shouldn't be a hypocrite lah. I should do it.
I feel like the LPA office should like employ you to like
Be ambassador for it, right?
yeah.
But I have not done it myself, so cannot pass yet.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing, because I think right now I feel a bit like if I do my LPA, there's a lot of conversations I need to do, just a lot of admin to get through. I'm not sure if my mom should be my donee because will she outlive me? Then my sister doesn't live in Singapore currently, so that's not very convenient. My friends, I'm just like, I think my friends know that I have the capacity and desire to talk about these things intensely, but I don't know if I've started talking to them about, would you want to be my donee?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And that's a lot administratively to think about after. I don't think I am afraid to talk about it. I just haven't felt the push. But I also know I shouldn't wait for that something to happen. So it's just something that has been on my mind. I'm not afraid to talk about it, but more of like a jialat lah, not urgent, don't do, but also no, very, very wrong, this thought process.
Yeah, that's true. What about you guys? Like anything you haven't yet faced?
I wouldn't say it's a human's passing. It's more like your pets. It's usually the animal. You laugh. But it's usually the animals, like when your pet passes on, like we don't have a grieving period, like when you go to work, if someone passed on, you can use a death certificate to say, hey, I need time off.
Yeah.
But if you treat your pet like a child and that pet passes on, you still have to go to work, And I think, especially with the younger generation, a lot of us are not having kids, but we're having pets as though they are
They're
kids.
fur babies.
Yes, fur babies. So what then happens? And I think these days, a lot of insurance policies are available for animals as well. So now we can also apply these policies as though the pets are our children. Yeah, but I think that's something that I'm still a little bit avoidant. Like when it comes to animals passing, like what do we
have?
do?
Like what animals do you have?
I have two cats, but then one of the cat is a FIP survivor. So basically,
Intense.
cats who have FIP, they will die within 5 weeks. The moment you are
I see.
diagnosed, within
Okay.
that 5 weeks, you will pass on. So in Singapore, they had an experimental drug where we had to 84 days intensively inject out my cat. And now he's okay. Like he survived. He's 2 years old now. But when he had FIP, he was only 3 months old. And on top of that, it was during COVID. So he's like a COVID baby, anxious, scared to meet people, and stuff. But we don't know what the long-term consequences are as well. Because he was like losing a lot of weight. At one point, he was so skinny and he forgot how to like walk and pee. And we
This
had
is
to
kind of like it mimics human.
very much, yeah.
Well, yeah, if someone's
Like
like
a terminal
sick,
illness,
yeah,
yes.
right. So I can understand like this is something that you will also have to deal with on that level, right? Yeah,
Yeah. And my
It's
mom
not just
also
a
brought
cat.
it up. She said, like, if I pass on, what's going to happen to my plants? they're also living things, right?
My mom has a lot of plants too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are people going to take it away? Will
Oh,
she
I
be
haven't thought
happy
about
with the
it.
person who adopts the plant?
Yeah, someone should have like a garden, right? Where you can like donate your plants. Yeah.
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 Yes. Alif, do you want to add?
For mine, I would say, would be talking to my mom about that.
Yeah.
Because like on my episode, I was just speaking with Liana,
Yeah.
and it's just digital assets. It's not really like talking to someone who went through a lot with you. Yeah, because like now that I'm an adult, I can think, and I remember what I went through back then. So if I were to talk about death with my mom, well, I think like one sentence, and then we both start crying. Yeah.
Oh, she's still very emotional about it.
Yeah.
About
She tries to hide.
oh, okay.
Typical
Very
mom.
similar,
Yeah,
right?
right, yeah.
So you guys just don't talk about that episode, as in that period where you were sick.
Well, not yet.
Okay. You can use this episode as a segue.
Yeah. Maybe I'll slowly drive into it.
Why do you want to talk to her about it?
I don't know. I feel like for me as a son, the only son, I have to kind of be the man of the family and like to kind of maybe let her use me as an outlet. Yeah, so I just want to know because she was going through it all alone and with my sisters, and it's all mentally exhausting. I can't imagine. So if I were to ask her like right now, like Ma, what do you actually feel back then, and what if she really shares what she feels, then I think like I don't know if I can continue this. Yeah,
Like, as in, you won't be able to continue the conversation
Yeah.
from the first question.
yeah.
Okay. But
Maybe,
you
like,
do think
memories
it's
will
an
come in.
important conversation to
Yeah,
have?
yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I'll try my best to slowly.
There's actually different versions online where I have this, like, I can't remember which organization that built it, but it was by students, where they call it a Dabao Death Kit. And inside, right, there's playing cards where
Okay.
when you put out a card, you can actually answer a question in relation to death. And there are activities where you can design your own caskets
Yeah.
and so on. And now there's like death cafes where they facilitate conversations about death when you are in the cafe itself. So you can actually have it over a meal. Yeah.
Which is what Hui Sze actually did, right? With you did the
Yes, death over dinner.
Death over dinner, which
Would that be
it's like
something?
really morbid.
I
Does
gotta
it sound
mentally.
positive?
He's thinking about it.
Yeah.
He's like, okay,
Like
interesting
nasi
segues.
padang and then
Let me just slowly build my mental and emotional confidence.
It really depends, right? Because as you're talking to your mom, I also sayang lah to talk to my mom about it. I think we all kind of can sense that, right? I also want to pace at how comfortable she is.
Yeah.
As a child, to also see if you put your parent through that, you also feel like, oh no, do I want to? As much as I think it's important. I also think about if I want to bring my mom to a death over dinner episode. I'm not sure. Maybe not. I'm not sure. I really don't know. But I do take opportunities like anytime as possible. Let's say you see a news article or someone in the immediate family is going through something or an extended family has passed on, then I'll talk about it a little bit. And also because we went through my dad's whole end of life journey. So it's not completely foreign to us. But I think between me and my mom, we haven't specifically spoken about our own deaths. Even though I'm so comfortable to talk about it with all of you. But when it's your loved one and it's hard to hold that space for each other. It's very different.
Thanks for bringing up the card game, because I was going to ask you, is there a product that you wish we had in Singapore that, would help us have this conversation about death, or even a product for when we go? Because I saw some very particular, I like hipster things. So I saw these like very hipster urns, and we don't have it in Singapore. I mean, so
Really?
I wanted it.
What is the
It's like an art piece. Like the urns, I think, are very traditional now. Like they're very porcelain white, but this one's like a really designer piece, and I want that.
Okay.
Yeah, but is there anything you guys feel like we are missing out in Singapore?
I think these urns thing, right? During my episode, I went to visit the Green Mortician. So they do water-based cremation for pets, right? And they actually have these very artistic kind of urns, right? I think when I saw it, I was just like, I also want it, because they are very beautiful art pieces. But I think my thought process now is more of like, who's gonna keep it?
Right.
Who's gonna want to keep my ashes, right? And if that person is no longer around, then where will it go, right? So I think it's beautiful to have these options. I think currently it only looks like it's only available for pets, which is great, right?
Just bring the ashes and say it's your pet.
You're like, can I have that urn?
Like,
maybe?
I just want to buy the urn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just pour it.
Actually, yeah, what's stopping us from doing it? right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's
How
possible.
about it?
Yeah. But I think it's more of like I think my question is more of who's gonna keep it.
Keep it, yeah.
Do I want to obligate someone to keep it? What if it is a lot for them to do so? What if they don't want to? What if they are doing it out of just because I said it, before I died? I think I don't know whether I can hold that tension. Yeah, because after I'm gone, I don't get to see the art piece anymore, leh.
I
So
know,
maybe
right?
I buy the urn as an art piece in my house when I can see it lah. Then, yeah.
Also very morbid, but
Also
it's like you're
can.
staring at your urn before you go, but all right.
I'm gonna. That's
Yeah,
my
it's
end
Like your
Yeah,
prized possession, right?
I'm getting there.
Okay. Yeah, what about you guys?
I think, well, for me, I would want to be scattered all around the world. I think that is something that is not available, not just in Singapore. But I think if you want to travel in customs with like a packet of ashes is a bit shady. So I asked the funeral parlours and they said that it's not allowed technically to bring ashes abroad. So you cannot actually scatter around the world.
How would they know?
I think this show is
Wow.
gonna get extensive.
Yeah, this is how we get cancelled.
You better
guys.
check, I better
yeah,
check.
I will
Markets.
check it. out.
Yeah,
Yes,
so I
but-
think that's something that a lot of people want because if you can scatter your ashes into the sea, which will eventually travel to different parts, right? Technically,
Yeah.
then why can't I still be scattered around the world? Like, I want to go to the top of a mountain and just like release, And that was something that my mom wanted as well. Because she, like, very similar to your thoughts, she don't want the next generation to bear the burden of like carrying the urn around and doing prayers and all that. Because this will actually bring up more conflict among family members because they will always argue about whose turn is it. We haven't done this, we haven't done that. So that was what she didn't want. Even though we visited like Woodlands Memorial, we saw very clean, modern places, columbariums. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's even possible in the future to be able to scatter ashes or like even turn it into a digital vault. And right? Like,
Yeah.
can I remove all of that and then still be able to hold space somewhere? Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so you never leave the digital world.
Yeah.
You're still there.
I mean, some kind
You
of
don't
like
leave the world, you're
random
still
Facebook
digitized, yeah.
account will still be floating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you can do that with Facebook. I think someone can kind
You
of
memorialize.
memorialize
memorialize. That's
it.
what it's
Yeah.
what it's
Yeah.
called. Right. Okay.
But then who is going to make sure that it doesn't turn into a spam account or like people posting nasty stuff? So like for my dad, like we actually memorialized his Facebook account.
Same.
So whenever it's an anniversary, like people will post it. But
that's
then
so
once
sweet,
in a
yeah.
while, there'll be like random, like, oh, click here to get $999,000.
Into the account?
Yeah.
Okay, please don't click it. It's like
So that's the
Audience-
danger
audience
of it.
service.
also,
I get,
Yeah,
I
right?
get
yes.
friend requests, random friend requests on my dad's account. I'm just like, what?
He's dead, right?
yeah.
Why do you still want to be friendly?
Like, interesting. A bit
But
late.
maybe the person is like a long-time friend, or it's just a
It
random
looks
account.
like a spam.
Oh, okay,
Spam
all right. I'm just the naive one
Also
here.
like, interesting choice.
yeah.
Yeah. Alif, you're gonna say?
I think for mine it's slightly different because we don't like cremate our bodies. Yeah, as a Muslim, so we bury our bodies. It's slightly different. So I've never really thought about a certain product or something that would tie to death. Yeah, but whatever you said is quite interesting. I like the design. Like you like the designer
Yeah.
kind of.
I'll send you the link after, but it was really nice. Yeah.
I wanted to jump in here to say there was some account that I follow online, and then this lady posted that she would want her casket to be like the picnic basket kind of
Oh.
The material,
the
like
material. Very chill. I found one online. I really love it. But I
Can
don't know
you Taobao it?
can burn or not. Can go into the fire or not.
But it's
As in,
wood,
There's
right?
certain measurements, but technically they said that
But it's wood,
cardboard.
right? Cardboard can, right?
Can.
Cardboard is wood
Yeah.
can. Then the rattan, it's like rattan, right? Like the
So
picnic
long as can
basket.
burn, I guess.
Maybe it'll take a while longer.
Yeah.
Okay.
anyway.
Very interesting where we're going with this discussion, but we must come back to life. Because I have to ask, like, when we talk about death, we must talk about life as well, right? So, what about this process has made you live life differently? Like, anything you've changed about your routine, or it's just been ruminating a little bit more? What do you guys think? Oh, you guys are ruminating now. Okay,
Yes,
got it. And I was like, yes.
definitely.
Yes.
I think ever since I got the opportunity to journey with my dad, and to confront death so in the face, right? Now and then, anytime when I see an article about death or anything death or grief related, I take it as a moment to just, like what I say, like arrest myself back into the present. I went for this death meditation workshop, and the person was saying, like, if you have only 1 week to live, you're not going to be bothered by a criticism, right? Or you're not going to be bothered about getting that Chanel bag or this negative thought that you have about yourself, right? You will let all of that go because that's not important. I mean, it can be important to you if you want it to be, of course. You know, if the last week of your life, the Chanel bag is important, go get it, right? I think that helped me put a lot of things into perspective, right? It clarifies for you what is important. What am I spending my time and energy on? Is this really, really important? And I love that every time I ruminate about death, it just clarifies a lot of things for me. It just makes it clear, do I want to attend this? Is this a enthusiastic yes, yes, or is it just a yes?
Right.
Do I want to spend my time on this? I think for me, it's very clear. It clarifies for me that the energy that I want to spend on is on people, experiences that matter to me, and that's more than enough. And that's what I want to take away with me, or I want to leave behind for the people who are going to be left behind. So yeah, I think that's how death serves me in living. It just brings me to be very present and clear. Like, it just like wipe your vision, your spectacle like clean, and then you, it's like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
Was that the same thing for you, Kethlyn?
I think my mom's way of bringing us up as kids was something, well, I guess it's a value that we hold on to. And I think it reminds us that, even though life is the longest thing we have, it's also very short in terms of the experiences that we have and so on. And my mom will always say this, you eat today and you die tomorrow. So whatever that you want, you make decisions now and don't regret it. So for me, when it comes to having my own personal values, I always ask myself at the end of the day, if I were to do all that I could today, will I die happy? And I want to live every single day to my best ability so that I don't live with regret. I don't go to bed with regret. And I think that's very important to me.
Okay. Yeah. Alif?
Well, I feel like the cancer part made a very strong impact on my life, because like now, whenever I face problems, whenever I go through a hard situation, I think to myself, like, if I could go through cancer at 10 years old, I can do anything.
This is nothing.
So it made me a bit daring and more bold to try new stuff and just appreciate everything that is like currently going in the moment. Even like right now when we're just talking about it. Yeah, so it's like I had a funny conversation with all my friends. I'm not sure, maybe it's funny now, but when it really happens, maybe it's not funny. Yeah, so I have a group of 7 guy friends. So we grew up with each other since like primary school. So it's about 15, 20 years of friendship. So we were saying like, we are just now living in the moment where we are just getting houses, kids, getting married. But then there will be a point where someone has to die. Like one by one, we will go. So like we were saying, imagine if you like out of the 7 guys, you are the last person. So that is like, I don't know, like for us, we are just rowdy guys, but when we talked about that, everyone just kept quiet and start to like sink in the moment. Like, wow, it's going to happen one day. And that last person will probably feel very miserable. Like those group chats, sometimes when you text, then many people reply, but then you go through back to that chat and then like it's just you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a bit emotional for guys, yeah.
It's great though.
Yeah,
I'm glad that
is.
you have that with your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think not many people are open to talk about that.
Well, I hope that by watching the documentary series, more people will have that conversation. And we have just proven that it doesn't have to be a downer. I halfway through it's like a motivational talk, but I do think it is an important conversation to have. So I thank you very much for all your different perspectives, and then, pulling in your mom and what you learned from your dad and your own experience with cancer. So thank you. So it's not a question mark. Thank you guys very much for like this conversation, which I think is very important to have. And So thank you very much for coming on the show. That's it from The Usual Place today. While you're here, like, subscribe, or hit the notification bell to get fresh content from The Usual Place. Now, if you want to listen to the podcast version of this episode, you can catch the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on the ST app. And you can also find me on Instagram at theusualplace_net, and you can tell me what you think about this episode. Now, before I let you go, do catch Let's Talk About Death on the Straits Times YouTube page and the ST website. The docu-series is out now. And I will see you next time at The Usual Place. Bye!